Hi everyone, I'm Steph Hodge with BoardGameGeek here with Keith from Thunderworks Games, and we get to look at the very awesome new expansion for role player called Fiends and Familiars. So Keith, tell me a little bit about this awesome expansion that just came out, right? Or is coming out soon, or?
Yeah, so Fiends and Familiars is the new expansion for role player. Just came out a couple weeks ago, so it's available at retail and it's making its way, and maybe a little bit longer overseas, but it is making it should be widely available. So this is the second expansion for role player. It is called Fiends and Familiars. The two big pieces are Fiends, which are these small cards that sit on the initiative cards that make your life difficult, and then the Familiars, which each player gets a familiar. It adds a little board, like you can see the jackalope, and you're just pointing to the screech owl. There's like 30. I think there's a bunch of them in the box. I think there's 30 of them. But anyway, and so they offer you a new attribute row. So like everybody's got their standard 6 attribute rows. So now you have your own unique one. So it's a new place to place dice. They have their own unique power. They also have some goals related to that. You know, there's a lot of different ways to get points in role player, and this is but another one. So yeah, it's another full expansion that kind of builds on.
And build on the world of role player.
Yeah.
I'm just most excited about the wolves because I love wolves. So, yeah, I know there's a couple, like a wolf familiar and the new wolf characters. I got really excited when I saw those, but I know it's more than just wolves.
We do have some wolves, but it's not at the wolves game. But yeah.
No, it is not a wolf game. There's just one wolf familiar, but he was my game.
And yeah, so one of the
strange things that make me happy, but
there's 4 new races, and one of them is like a wolf dog race called the Vargar.
Yeah.
So you can see that right there.
Yeah.
And then there you go. Looks good.
Ooh, look at that.
So there's 12 new class cards. There's a bunch of new alignment cards. There's a bunch of new backstory cards. And then there's the Kaika, there's the penguin race. So this one was kind of added. All the races actually were added as suggestions by backers during the Kickstarter campaign. And the penguins in particular, there's some drama around. Some people were really excited about the penguins, other people not so much.
Oh yeah.
They made it in because the votes said they should be. So yeah, each one of those familiars has a range of scores that you're trying to get, just like you're trying to get certain score ranges for a character card, like on an attribute row. But now we're trying to get lower value. So this is a good, your familiar is a good place to put your lower value dice. They're also trying to get certain color values, just like in a backstory card. And one of the cool new features is the boost dice. I'm sorry, not the boost dice. That's the old expansion, the split dice. So the split dice.
Yeah, the split dice.
They're brand new die design by, and they represent 2 separate colors at the same time, but they only go between 1 and 4. So they're going to help you out in certain parts, and then they're going to be less helpful on other parts. So this expansion has been really interesting to work on. Because there's so much kind of going on with role player already, and it's like trying to figure out like where are areas that we can add some fun, add some variety without like blowing out the gameplay to something ridiculously long, and kind of keeping. I love expansions that kind of keep the core gameplay like pretty much intact and just kind of adds some bells and whistles and things that are like really easy to get up and going, and that's kind of what I try to do here.
No, I love that. And I love the split dice because I always find it hard to find my color when I play 2 players. So the split dice gives me more opportunity to find my color and get extra points that way, even though they're low. Exactly. So, but you need to find the cards that allow you to score for low rows, and it works out.
There is always a way, right? And obviously we've added a bunch more market cards, which adds a lot more variety. And then and part of that is that we added some more armor pieces from the original game sets, so that like because as we're adding more cards to the deck, it made it harder to collect some of these armor sets. So now each one of these armor sets actually has one additional piece in it, which makes it still viable to collect those armor sets, even though we're kind of adding a lot of variety to the deck. So there's a lot of cool new stuff for sure. There's also a brand new set of monsters. We released the Monsters and Minions expansion, and that had 6 monsters in it, and people were like, hey, I want more monsters. And the problem with that was like, well, that means I need more adventure cards, because the monsters have their own deck of adventure cards. So now this expansion has 6 new monsters, a single player and a multiplayer, one of each. So this is the Megapede. You can see the 2-player plus version on the left and the 1-player on the right, and which have different score. There's different points scales and stuff. And so this version has a whole new set of monsters and a whole new set of adventure cards. So 1 more for each class color. So if you're playing a 5-player game and nobody's playing red, that means that you can pick from the 2 red monsters if you have both expansions. So it just adds variety to the game and lets you mix it up without like having to add tons and tons.
And I like the little star on some of these monsters so like if you have the most combat at the end of the game, you can get that extra points.
That's called the champion bonus. Yeah, so this rewards the player who's done the most damage to the monster, right? So
yeah, because that's always me.
The Cyclops. Yeah. It's interesting in role player, especially with the expansions, people tend to go heavy on combat, and after a couple plays, they start to figure out that like the beauty or the kind of the interesting piece of role player, at least in my opinion, is figuring out the balance between like going down the combat route and then going on like the market card buying route. And that rewards those people that go a little bit heavier combat for the combat bonus. These are 2 of the new minions in the game. So Monsters and Minions had a bunch of minions. Fiends and Familiars also has minions. So this adds more variety to the minion deck. There's some cool stuff where we're kind of doing some kind of more traditional like attribute tests, where like you're trying to get you're taking a look at your Constitution score, and you roll a die and you add it to that, and like that tells you whether you won or not. So this one, it's a kind of different way that we're evaluating those things, because and that kind of came out of people saying, I want to test my stats. I'm like, well, okay, here we're gonna test your stats in kind of the way people are expecting. So a lot of these expansions and pieces of these games are like responses to players' reactions. People want to see certain things in the game, and I'm like, well, yeah, sure, let's take a look at that, and let's see if we can find a way to make that work. I love the art on some of these new minions for sure. Lucas did a great job. So there's a couple other changes that we've made to role player with this expansion. One is how setup works. We simplified setup so that you always start with the same number of dice on the board, no matter what. And then we have this thing called a Call to Adventure card, which is kind of a cut card that goes inside the market deck, and it is going to basically tell you when to switch to like the second half of the game. So the first part of the game, you roll dice out onto the initiative cards, 2 dice per card, and then you go around when you're selecting dice. You take both dice and you put them both down, and then you take one of those 2 actions. And then when you hit this card, then you kind of go back to the traditional way where you're just drafting 1 per round. And so what that does is it kind of removes some of the setup time, because it's always the same, and the back of the card tells you exactly how to set it up with what expansions you're using. It removes some of the setup and puts it kind of into the game. So they're like, let's just get to this, let's get to the character creation faster. So that was kind of one of the kind of more interesting changes, just because
I do have a question about that.
Involved sometimes to get this game going. But
I had a quick question about that. So could you instead just start with rolling 9 dice at the beginning of the game, or just the first 3 rounds you do 2 dice? Did you try just rolling 9 at the beginning? I'm just curious how that process went.
Yeah, so the original design was that you started with a different number of dice per player count, right? It was either 6, 7, or 8, depending on how many players you had. And the main intention there was just to just kind of control the length of the game a little bit, so and then when we got to this point, we tried a bunch of different things, and I had a really good developer on this, John Brieger, who kind of helped me hone in some of these changes, and he tried a couple different things, and this is kind of where we landed with it. I know it's interesting. Some people, I'm pretty sensitive to game length. Like if a game is going too long, and I'm pretty sensitive to that, and I want to get out. No matter how much I like the game, if it's too long, it's too long. But other people don't feel that way about their games. Sometimes people feel like, the longer I'm playing the game, the more fun I'm having. So, some people have done some small variants to how the game is set up, but in general,
I think having the two dice at the beginning is interesting.
Is you always do whatever you want. I think this is the best, but if you think something else is the best, then go for it. Yeah.
No, I like having the two dice to draft from, because you might not want that blue die, but you really want that two green die right there. So, but it's a pull at the beginning. So you're and you don't get to, wherever you place it, you won't get to activate one of the rows. Right. So it's like another kind of brain burny, like, what do I do?
Right. I think it's an interesting decision point, and kind of mixes it up quite a bit. Where you might go for one die that you want, but you might not. You might be getting another die that you don't want at the same time. So you have to kind of measure that, whether it's interesting or not, or whether it's a good choice for you or not. The other thing that we haven't talked a whole lot about is the fiends. So the fiend cards are these small cards, and they sit on the initiative cards. And basically, if you take the dice from that card, they are the yellow backed ones. They're small, they're yellow. I don't see them. They're there. Yeah. So here's some. So these sit on those higher level initiative cards, and if you take the dice on this card, you have to. If you take the dice on that initiative card, you have to take this fiend card, and that is not a cool thing most of the time. So for example, this one says when you place a die in Strength or Constitution attribute row, you get 2 injury tokens. That's not a good thing. But unless you have your Strength and your Constitution already filled up, then it's not really going to affect you. So what do you care? So there's kind of this. When you select dice in Role Player, there's like this super layered decision of when you select the die. It's like, what color do I want? What number do I want? Where am I going to put it because I want to take what action? And then now we've also got if we're taking 2 dice at a time, is this combination of dice good, or is this combination of dice over here better? And then now we have this how impactful is getting this negative card going to affect me moving forward? So it kind of makes that decision point on what die you pick even crunchier. And then of course you can get rid of these guys. They cost 5 gold to get rid of, and then or you can also use a charisma token, which tokens in Role Player were charisma was always kind of a piece that I struggled with, to how do I make this value but not be the same thing as having a gold piece. And I think over the years, people have kind of identified the charisma as being maybe one of the weaker of the 6 attribute rows, and then now to get rid of a fiend, you can spend a charisma token. So now,
they're really valuable now.
They're
really valuable now.
Yeah. So now, at the beginning of Role Player, maybe you don't want to fill up that charisma row because you might want to take those the dice that the fiends are on, and you want to get rid of them.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's
I want to talk a little bit more about the familiars, because I think they're really a really cool feature, because now you want the low dice, and so you also get to activate that ability when you place the die, but it doesn't really count as an attribute, right? So you can't mimic it doing other attribute actions.
Right. Those slots are considered part of your character sheet.
Right. But the power, the haunted power that we see on the screen right now. So that can only be activated when you place the die, right?
Right, exactly. So whenever you place a die on your familiar, you get to take the action that's on there. So, and they're really cool. They're all different. And they're
really cool.
I think they help make your character feel unique as well. And I always like just the idea. This idea of having a familiar, I've always had in my mind for a long time. There's an old game called Boulder's Gate, where there's a character called Minx, and he had like a animal on his shoulder, and I always thought that was super cool. So it was like the idea of like at some point down the road, as I'm working on this game, we should add some familiars because animals are cool, and this is kind of where it ended up kind of showing up at. So
no, it's perfect.
Yeah, so they also have the thing where you get a gold when you finish the row, and you can you can see underneath the ability, it has the 3 gems. So it's looking for 3 specific dice colors, which are going to get you
more puzzles.
0, 1, or 3 points. What was that?
More puzzles. Like I love like figuring it all out and making it all work. I mean, that's what's so great about role players, is making it all work. And so having that added like puzzle to solve is just so much fun for me.
There's puzzle elements all over, and I think when people first play role player, they start to figure out like, oh, I'm not going to be able to solve all these puzzles in the time that I have. So it's always a lot of the game is figuring out like which one of these puzzles, or which of these puzzles is worth like trying to solve in the time and the actions that I have left, based on the cards that are available and the dice that are available, and what other people are doing. So yeah, it's a very puzzly game.
Love it.
And people dig it.
Yeah, totally. So again, this is available today. There's a lot going on with the expansions. Do you have more planned for role player? Is there something else you want to say? Like,
yeah. So I mean, role player at its
obviously
base,
you just had a
like
successful Kickstarter. You just had that huge Kickstarter.
Right. So I feel like the base game of role player is kind of, it is what it is. Like I think with the 2 expansions, we've kind of hit critical mass of stuff that I want to add to it. So I just ran a Kickstarter for a game called Role Player Adventures, which you can take any character that you've built in any version of role player, including promos or expansions, and you can take that character on a narrative adventure game that we've been working on for a long time.
Nice.
And it's a kind of DM-less narrative adventure game. And the big hook is that it's cooperative, but the big hook is that all the choices that you make in the game like super matter in the game. There's multiple layers of mechanics that are built there to remember the choices you did, so that the world can react to you on future encounters and stuff like that. So that was my biggest Kickstarter campaign to date. So that's exciting. In the world of, I also have, we announced, we showed off the cover of the new version of Cartographers earlier this week. So there's a new version of Cartographers coming called Cartographers Heroes. And that is a standalone game, but you can mix and match portions of it. So like all the monsters you can mix in with the other ones, and then the scoring cards, which is a big part of the gameplay, is the scoring cards. You can kind of mix those in. And then there's also going to be some map packs coming that have unique rules that you may have, that have their own pads of paper with features on them. And we're excited about that. Like the plan is to do a Kickstarter for that in the fall. So that's something to look forward to. But I always have lots of stuff going on. So
that's exciting.
And then I think when it comes to the history of role player, like I want kind of, to kind of, now the role player is kind of done. And then now we're going to kind of continue into the adventures world and kind of do these narrative games. And we really want to build like a community around the game and give people tools to like create some of their own adventures, and then continue to support it moving forward. And then there might be some other role player stuff down the road. We'll see.
Oh gosh, I hope so, because I have loved everything you've done in this universe, the role player cartographers. So I'm very excited for anything you have in mind, because obviously you have a brilliant mind.
I appreciate that.
So, this is like so exciting for you, and that there was an awesome Spiel des Jahres, or Kenner Spiel des Jahres nomination, which is highly. It was definitely needed and totally awesome that you were nominated. Sad you didn't win, because I love cartographers very much. So, but it's still cool to have that nomination. So we have a few minutes.
Nominated by the Spiel Committee, and they picked 3 games for the whole year. That's pretty crazy to be kind of like one of those 3 games.
No, definitely well deserved. I played a whole bunch. It's one that you can like play online with friends during this crazy time, and it's so much fun. So
yeah, Cartographer is a great quarantine game. I mean, it sucks that we're in quarantine and there's a lot of bad stuff going on, but like it's been nice that that game in particular works really well with playing over Zoom or whatever. So it's been getting a lot of play by a lot of people.
yeah. So is there anything very quick that you want to mention before we're complete here? I just want to make sure you say everything you want to say.
Yeah. Just happy to be here. Thanks for all the support. Check out the new expansion for Role Player, and have fun.
Thank you very much, Keith, for coming on and showing us Role Player Fiends and Familiars from Thunderworks Games. We look forward to hearing more in the future.